answer any other questions that you have about the process or the mechanics of the amendment as well.
Go ahead, Kevin Vandewey.
Steve, I mean, do you have any rough estimate on how much it would cost? It doesn't seem like it would be that much of a cost to Left 2 funds.
No, there are 6 surviving spouses in Left 2 that would begin receiving whose benefits have already been suspended in LNI. And they would begin receiving a pension payment somewhere, my rough estimate based on what LNI told me is somewhere in the area of $30,000 to $40,000 a year. Those 6 would begin in July, and then depending on the number of remarriages in the future, there's a total population of Left 2 surviving spouses of a little over 30. There are 2 surviving spouses in the patrol who have already had their benefits suspended. But for Left 2, that's what we're talking about, is 6 right out of the gate, another potential 30, and then as there are future line of duty deaths that involve a surviving spouse, that population could increase over time.
Steve, I just had a question about, you use the terminology paying their pensions. Is that, as I understand it, Left 2, we already do pay pensions out, so there's no problem with the Left 2 pension system in this manner, right?
No.
So the pension system is perfectly fine. We've already changed our Left 2 pension system. We're trying to fix an L&I problem, and we're using our Left 2 funds to fix an L&I problem.
I think that's a fair assessment.
And so that's my concern on a policy level, is when I think about our fiduciary responsibility to the Left 2 pension fund, is that we should be whole. And my concern on a policy level, I agree that the money's not going to be that issue, the individual spouses, but I'm concerned that we're tapping into our Left 2 pension funds to deal with the L&I fund issue. And I'd really like to know on the legal side how we can use our pension fund to deal with a problem in another system. And why not? I mean, because the original bill was trying to fix the system that was broken. And the fix was to use our funds to fix their system.
Legally, I understand your policy questions. Legally, the idea of using the Left 2 fund for duty-related death and disability benefits is not an issue. The Left 2 pension funds already provide a number of duty-related disability and death benefits. So it's more of a policy argument about switching one of those, the source of one of those payments from one fund to another. But legally, either would be appropriate for making this type of payment.
Don, can you weigh in on that? Is that we can use our Left 2 pension funds for whatever purpose that the board decides?
Well, that's not what's happening here. What's happening here is we're talking about a legislative change.
Okay.
And so it wouldn't be the board making the decision. I haven't looked into this issue as far as how the funds can be used. I'd be happy to do some research into that. But it seems to me, strictly off the top of my head, that if the legislature allows this pension fund was created by the legislature, and if the legislature allows this to be a benefit from this fund, that's probably going to be okay, but I'll look into it a bit more.
Yeah, hey, Jeff here. Just a comment. Maybe a point of reference would be whether or not the fiduciary responsibility attaches to the fund itself or to the members. And that would probably drive an answer to the question more than specifically is it legal, within the funds distribution authority. I have kind of a larger question though here. Can you give us a list of the stakeholders where everybody rings in on the amendment?
Well, That's one of the reasons why there was some desire for this board meeting. The different stakeholder groups that have spoken to me kind of plays out as follows. The Association of Cities and the counties both testified at the hearing on the bill, on the board's bill, that they had concerns about the cost and they had concerns about using the L&I fund in this way, the way that the board had proposed. The business community and self-insurers also weighed in with concerns at the hearing regarding the fact that the remarriage prohibition applies to all workers in the L&I fund, and the precedent that providing it to surviving spouses of Left 2 and patrol members who were killed in the line of duty, they were concerned then that that precedent might get expanded in the future, even to potentially private sector workers. The Left 2 stakeholder groups, the Compass has indicated that they support the amendment as well as the underlying bill. The Kelly can speak to the firefighters, but my understanding that they've communicated to me is that they support the amendment and the underlying bill. The Fraternal Order of Police, Jack, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is FOP supports the amendment and the underlying bill. WACOPS had some questions about whether to support the amendment or not, and they specifically reached out to see if it would be possible for the board to take a position one way or another on the amendment, and then that would help clarify their position as an organization.
And if I may address the question about the fiduciary obligations, the obligations are the board members' obligations to the fund to ensure that the fund is available and paying appropriate benefits for all of its members. So
Thank you, Dawn.
The members are indirect, and your obligation is to ensure the fund is there.
Steve, this is Wally. I had a point.
Yeah.
If I could. In regards to what David's concern was, correct me if I'm wrong, when the members were alive and contributing to the Left 2 Fund, they had made complete payments, correct? Up until the time of their death.
Their contributions?
Right.
Yes.
So upon death, the benefits, the survivor benefits, then became split between L&I and the Left 2 Fund.
Yes.
Okay. So all we're really requesting at this point is that their full survivor benefit is paid for by the Left 2 Fund, which seems reasonable since their spouse who fell in the line of duty made those complete contributions. Am I thinking correctly? We're not actually asking the Left 2 Fund to overcompensate the survivors. We're just asking the Left 2 Fund to completely compensate the survivors.
Yeah, I see your point. No, that's the compensation. This is more of a change of source in the compensation. The amount that they're getting or would get is exactly the same as they were getting before remarriage.
Right. And the point being is that when their spouses were alive, they had made those contributions into the Left 2 Trust. It was only the fact that they fell in the line of duty that the survivors were receiving partial benefits from the Left 2 Trust. Right?
Yes. The survivor benefits are split between Left 2 and L&I right now. And the crux of the matter is there's a policy inconsistency between L&I and Left 2 regarding whether you continue to receive those benefits if you remarry.
Right. So really, had these folks not fell in the line of duty, there would have been more risk to the left two fund because all of the funds would have been coming out of the trust versus L&I. So really, we're not, exposing the trust to any further risk. It would have been risk that would have been there had these people not, fell in the line of duty.
I see. If I understand your point, if they hadn't died prematurely due to the line of duty death, they would have continued to accrue pension benefits, and that would have been paid for out of the left two fund.
Right. So this amendment doesn't expose the trust to any more risk than what the trust would have had if these people wouldn't have died in the line of duty.
I don't know quite how to answer that. I think that's true. If
Okay.
they hadn't died in the line, it's exposing the trust to more risk. There will be some cost. I can't speculate on the amount of the cost. I think Matt Smith talked to the board earlier last interim and indicated in response to a question that the rough amount to move the contribution rates 1 basis point was $3.6 million, if I'm remembering correctly. And so at least initially it doesn't appear that the amount that would be paid to this pool would approximate that, but that'll take an actuary to really answer it.
Okay.
But there will be a cost.
Well, I understand that, but I guess my point being is that by bringing these beneficiaries back and paying the entire survivor benefit out of the trust would have been paying those benefits had their spouse not fallen in the line of duty.
Yes.
Okay. So really, we're not talking about any additional costs. These monies have already been contributed by their spouses prior to their death.
And do I also hear you suggesting then that the benefit is not even a new benefit, it's simply a redirection of from which fund the benefit will be paid, that it was already a survivor benefit in this fund? Is that what
Well,
I hear you saying?
if I'm thinking correctly, that's how I see it, is that these monies have already been paid by the member when they were contributing to the trust. So it was only upon their death that their survivors were only entitled to a portion of those benefits that they had already paid into the trust. So bringing them back is not really, in my mind, exposing the trust to any more risk than what we would have had if the member hadn't passed away.
So, Steve, if I can ask a question. Wally, I appreciate those questions. Those are really good. As I understand it, is that down that line of thinking is that L&I benefits are paid ongoing, and that there's no bifurcation of benefits. Is that we pay into the members pay into the left two funds, and they receive the full benefits. L&I is also paying into a fund during a person's, as they're working, if they get disabled or other things. And those benefits come from the L&I fund. And so what we're talking about is that those L&I funds, we would be picking up those benefits that normally would have been paid out of the L&I fund. We would be picking up those benefits. So it's not a benefit that the left two fund is currently going to be paying. It's benefits that the L&I fund would have been paying, and this amendment would change that.
Well, let me back up a little bit and get a little bit more precise, because we're starting to kind of slip a little bit or get a little bit loose in how this is characterized. Technically, right now, L&I is not paying these benefits. They're suspended. Nobody is paying the benefits to these surviving spouses. The L&I will pay benefits up until the spouse remarries, and the actual cost for adding these new benefits after remarriage would be under the current system, under the board's original bill. That cost would have been borne by the specific cities that had line of duty deaths. So, for instance, Lakewood. when one of the surviving spouses in Lakewood remarried. In their reserve fund at Lakewood, if they were self-insured, they would have had to set aside money to pay that surviving spouse for the rest of their life. When it turned out that the surviving spouse remarried, they got an unexpected savings against their risk pool, which allowed them to potentially draw down their reserves. And similarly, on the state side, the way the funding of the benefit would be is if one of these spouses remarries, it shows up as sort of a credit in the state's reserve fund for paying out benefits. In the event of the board's bill passage, the original board bill passing, there would have been a debit that would have gone back on the books for the risk pools of the cities that were self-insured, or for the state risk pool for the workers' comp fund. But currently, nobody is paying these benefits when they're remarried. So this is a new benefit, and the question is where the source of the funding of that new benefit would come from.
Yes. Can I make a couple comments, Steve? This is Mark.
Sure.
Sure. Okay. Well, I will say at this point I'm completely in favor of the amendment and the bill, and I'll tell you just sort of quickly some of my reasons here. First, it's going to be a very minimal cost. I don't ever see the pool of surviving spouses expanding to the extent that it's going to have much of an impact at all. It will have a cost, but I really don't think, and not an actuary, but just based on my experience being on the board from the inception, I really, really doubt that there's going to be an increase in contribution rates because of this bill. And so what it really does, it remedies the policy inconsistency between L&I and the pension fund. In terms of the testimony or the issues that the AWC and the counties and the self-insurers had, in terms of treating surviving spouses of LEOFF members differently than other surviving spouses of other workers, people in the LEOFF system and their surviving spouses are already treated differently as a matter of law because we're in a different pension system. I understand there are issues about cost, but the policy piece about being treated differently, for me, is a minimal thing because, like I said, we're already treated differently under the law. The law grants us a different status due to our pension system. And the last thing I'd like to say is that technically, really, this is no different than any other pension benefit enhancement that the board has supported and has convinced the legislature to pass since the inception of the LEOFF 2 board back in 2002. There have been over 30 changes based on the board's recommendations to the legislature since the board has been in existence, and this really isn't any different than any of those other pension benefit enhancements. So for those reasons, I'm completely in support of the amendment. And one last comment I'll say is that if this bill is not going to pass based on the original bill. It has a it has a chance of passing, much better chance of passing if we decide we need to do is take care of those survivors of people in our own pension system that are already treated differently under the law. And I think we have a moral obligation and a fiduciary obligation to do so. That's it.
Steve, this is Paul.
Yes.
And Mark said it pretty well. And I agree this is a benefit enhancement that's, I think, absolutely necessary, really. It serves the surviving spouse as well. The fiduciary cost is probably not going to be enough to raise contribution rates, but I guess if it is, we'll have to deal with it at that time. I'm inclined to be in favor of this amended bill at this point. So that's my comment.
This is Kelly. Are there any other comments or questions? At this point, we don't have any motion.
I'll go ahead and move that we support the amendment as written. This is David. I appreciate all the conversation. I always appreciate listening from the whole board. I do see this as an enhanced benefit, which I know is critical for our members. I agree that it doesn't have a long-term financial impact on the fund. But as we look at these enhanced benefits, it's always a concern of mine of, is it within this doesn't feel as a pension benefit. It is a benefit to our members, and an enhanced benefit on that. So I'll move that we support the amendment as written.
This is Wally. I'll second it.
Is there further discussion on the motion?
Mr. Chair, this is Pat.
Okay.
As a member of the board that represents the left two members in this state, I truly believe that our members would want to support our families, and that's why I am in favor of doing this. It's taking care of our own people, as we're bound to do it morally. It's got to go beyond politics to do it. We've got to take care of our folks. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Pat. Any other comments?
I think I just have a question. Do you want me to do some research on this, or do you feel comfortable right now?
Well, I think it would be helpful to make sure that we have all the questions that came up answered.
So the two questions I have for myself right now is I guess to put it simply, but probably too simply, whether the legislature can draw from the left to pay for this. And then I wrote down a second one, that if the legislature does not pass the bill, the board's ability to pay this benefit itself from the fund. Is that right?
I don't think the second question came up.
No? Okay. Somebody had talked about that, so I was going to look. But we can wait to see what the legislature does.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anything further? Okay, hearing no one, I'd like to take a vote here, and I don't know how we're going to go about it. I'll just ask for a voice vote, and if there's anybody that says no, we'll do a roll call then. All right, so all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, is there anyone opposed? Okay.
Kelly,
Yes, Jack.
for the record, I'd like to see us do a roll call vote.
Okay, I'll check with staff here to see if we've got everybody that's online. You have a list there?
Yeah.
Do you have a microphone? On that list?
Yes. Would it help if I call the roll,
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair? Jack Symington,
Yes.
Representative Holey,
Yes.
Mark Johnston,
Aye.
Pat Hepler,
Yes.
Paul Golnick,
Yes.
Wally,
Yes.
David Klein,
Yes.
Representative Vandewey. Yes. Chair Fox.
Yes.
That was everybody that we had in attendance.
Okay, in closing here, just one thought that came to mind here as we went through this. I want to kind of almost speaking, thinking out loud here, but I would like to ask our director, in the future with things like this, we pay a benefit. Our employer pays a significant amount of money to L&I for our benefits. Is there any way to find out, how much money collectively, we know what we contribute to Left Plan 2. We have all that information, but do we know how much money we contribute to the labor and industries as a left group, like police officers and firefighters in the state of Washington? So can we get some of that information? because I think in the bigger picture here is, as Mr. Klein indicated there, we pay for one benefit on one side, we pay for another one, and now we're going to compensate. I believe we're doing the right thing for our beneficiaries, for our plan participants by providing this benefit. But at some point, we're paying for it into L&I, and then we're going to go ahead and augment that by using our Left Plan 2 funds, which, I'm in favor of. I believe it's the right thing to do and it's legal to do. But at some point, is there some way to say how much, why don't we do disability in Left Plan 2 instead of with L&I? And I just wanted to know what the numbers are so we could have maybe it's a debate about it or a discussion anyway. So is that possible?
I don't know the numbers, but it should be possible. I'll contact L&I. They do track police officers and firefighters as separate risk pools, so I think they can provide us with how much is contributed by employers to those risk pools statewide.
Okay. Not in the right immediately, but here when we get into the interim would be some good information just for edification.
All right.
Anybody else have any comment about that or objection to? Okay.
Well, that seems real appropriate to get that information.
Yeah, I would agree. Thanks, Kelly. Good questions.
Okay, is there any other business? Steve, do we have anything else?
Just briefly on the other bills of interest, there was a bill requiring all public employers to offer the state's deferred comp plan that was introduced in the Senate and includes some other pieces for mandatory enrollment for all new state employees and also a minimum default for new state employees. New state employees could opt out or change their contribution amount, but it would set up a beginning. That bill is in play, but is not yet progressed. I mainly wanted to make sure that you were aware of that one, because it does apply to all LEOFF employers as well. It's all public employers, but it's similar but much broader in scope than the proposal that was talked about at the LEOFF 2 board a year and a half ago. As far as outreach activities for the administrative update, the State Council of Firefighters had their ledge conference, and I gave a summary of the remarriage bill at that and answered Q&A. Paul Neal was at the National Association of Public Pension Attorneys Winter Conference and did a presentation on salary spiking that was very well received. The State Council of Firefighters will be having their education conference a bit later in the session. We'll have a table there. We also had a table at the Firefighters Legislative Conference. That is it as far as prepared remarks for the administrative and the legislative update, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from any of the board members? Okay, well, if there's any other business to come before the board from anyone? Okay, hearing none. Thank you, everybody, for calling in and getting online here. We appreciate it. Nothing further. We are adjourned until March 25th.